Developing person-centered outcomes, the 8-step process described. Step 1, check. Developing outcomes has to start with the person themselves. This should always be our very first port of call. We cannot support people to develop person-centered outcomes if we don't first understand 2 key things at least. We must know what matters to them and what their future aspirations might be. This ensures our starting point is rooted in the things that are important to the person, not to others, and sets the direction of travel. Not having this understanding puts us in danger of imposing our own ideas and often developing service-driven outcomes. Sally would like to lose some weight and eat more healthily, whereas Peter's team are a fit bunch and feel it would be good for Peter to be more active and watch less TV each day, although he doesn't enjoy the activities they are proposing. There is a real difference between someone deciding to try to lose weight themselves and a service deciding it would be beneficial to impose a weight loss program on a person where this is not a person's own priority. To gain this understanding, you need to have a person-centered conversation. The outcome of this conversation can be recorded in lots of different ways. It is the quality of the conversation that matters. We use person-centered thinking and approaches as a framework for the conversations, and we often record the information in a 1-page profile. Step 2, now. Once we have checked that we have a good understanding of what matters to the person, we need to establish a clear idea of current reality. This helps to establish the issues that are the priority for the person and those that know them to focus on. For example, going swimming each week is something that is working well for Alice at the moment, and no changes are required at this stage. But not having friends living locally to socialise with is something that is not working for her. If we use the working not working tool to identify these issues, the outcomes that are ultimately developed will be relevant to the person and gives others that know and care about the person the opportunity to create a clearer picture of current reality and priorities. It may be helpful for the person to identify what is working and not working across 4 areas: learning and employment, home and independence, friends, relationships and community, and health and well-being. Step 3, prioritise. You know what matters to the person. You have a clear idea of what is currently working and not working. How are you going to decide what to choose for your first outcome? Again, taking the person-centered approach, priorities should be agreed in partnership with the person. An agenda created collaboratively is far more likely to lead to outcomes successfully achieved, and often people who are supporting the person to develop the information are the same people who will be involved in making sure the actions are achieved. James doesn't have a job, and the people that know him well agree that the biggest difference to his life would be to have paid employment and to be self-sufficient. They all agreed that finding him opportunities to get paid employment is the biggest priority, and to think about this first. Step 4, success. It is important to reach agreement on what success looks like if the thing that is not working is resolved. This step is about being clear of your broad long-term outcomes for each priority area. Back to James and desire for a job. How important is it that the job is a paid one? Would voluntary work be okay? Would a part-time job be acceptable to James? By asking the individual what success looks like for them, then we're likely to make sure the outcomes are specific to them and not assuming a previous well-trodden path for others in a similar situation would automatically apply here. Your ideas do not have to be detailed or specific at this point. Step 5, test it. We now need to get clear and specific by asking some questions. There are 2 main things to check if your ideas so far are actually outcomes or actually solutions disguised as outcomes, and also that we haven't drifted off the initial starting point too far. Solutions disguised as outcomes. The problem with confusing solutions with outcomes is that it shuts out alternative possibilities and other solutions too early. For example, Sally solely focusing on losing a stone of weight loses sight of the fact that she would like a healthier lifestyle so that she can do more things, and doesn't address other things that she could do to live more healthily, such as better eating habits and getting fit. To test if you really have articulated an outcome, ask yourself the following questions in no particular order or number of times. What would it give you? What would it do for you? What would it make possible for you? When you get to the point where you lose clarity and start talking about overarching aspirations, you need to focus back down onto the last clear point you reached. Sally wants to lose that stone, but what would that give her? It would give her more energy and more self-confidence. What would that do for her? She would be fitter and means she would be able to fit more fun things in her day and feel more positive about herself. So is the real outcome for Sally more about having a weekly plan, including exercise she enjoys with people she likes, and good balanced meal planning that lets her lose some of that extra weight? Second thing to test the outcome for is to check back that it's addressing something that takes the person closer to their aspirations, change something that isn't working, or support something that is working. Basically, it's something that is important to the person in some way. We know we haven't drifted off the point and still working on something the person wants. Congratulations, you now have a robust, clear, and truly person-centered outcome. So what next? Step 6. What's stopping you? You have your outcome, but at this point it's useful to ask what might be some of the barriers and obstacles to achieving this outcome so that we can take this into account when we identify our next steps. James's job that he'd like to achieve is great, but his prospects would be better if he had some support around his communication skills, and currently people don't know enough about what is available to support him. One of the actions around this outcome is likely to be something around finding this out and supporting him with his communication better. Step 7. Action. Having identified the overall outcome and what's getting in the way, the next step is to identify the steps that you need to take to achieve the outcome and overcome those obstacles. Try to think creatively and not to jump to the obvious service options. This is where you can identify small targets or goals to help achieve the broader outcome. Different places will do this in different ways and have different language to describe this, and that is fine as long as there is clarity about what is the outcome. Having identified the goals, targets, then you can identify the first step actions to get started. Smart, of course, with timescales, people responsible and resources required. James's overall aspiration is to live independently, do something valuable for society that he enjoys and earns him enough money to be self-sufficient. His outcome is to get a job working with cars for around 20 hours a week. Some of his actions include getting an apprenticeship in a garage, enrolling on a college course to give him some of the theory, and to join a local group to work on his communication skills. Step 8. Record. Strangely, the first starting point for organisations when thinking about outcomes is sometimes to initially focus on what recording methods are being used at the time and equipping employees to be able to fill this in appropriately. The energy and focus can be on whether the paper is capturing the right information and we become absorbed in data collection rather than knowing what we do is making a real difference to people's lives. If we always take our starting point as the person themselves, the recording that we do should and could be led from that. The information that is collected can be recorded in any way that makes sense to the person and also serves the needs of the organisation. Recording can also be formal or informal. So in summary, start with the person. Know what matters to them, what is working and not working, and their aspirations. Make sure you find out what the priorities are and what it looks like when they're achieved. Check you have robust and clear outcomes from this. Know what barriers you need to overcome and set clear actions from this, which you record in a transparent and clear and sensible way. Simple.